Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle, and this is Elle's Reptiles. This week, we are going to do a video that I thought would be interesting and helpful. I did a while back like an updated review of a pump sprayer that I've had for several years after it broke, just showing you like how long it lasted, which that was just a short. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to do the same thing with the big tanks, because that is probably important to know if you're going to invest a whole bunch of money in something like a stack of tanks. This week we are just going to focus on the custom cages, VisionCages tank. I got this just shy of 2 years ago. So the very first thing, let's talk about the overall structure, like how it is physically holding up after 2 years. So everything still works fantastically. I guess I should let you actually hear that. Or is that, which way are we going? Okay. Most of these doors still slide perfectly. They're not squeaking, they're not like rattling or anything. They're not super scratched up. There are a couple of scuffs here and there on some of them, but they're not actually too bad for having them set up for 2 years. The backgrounds are all holding perfectly. The mesh screen is all perfect. Nothing is drooping. Everything is staying where they are. I will say that I didn't expect as much dust to get into these. Maybe it's just because I have dogs and they run around. But like, even though the back is completely filled in, you can see that these still get dusty and they still have to be dusted. When we get to the bottom, there is kind of an issue. For some reason, the bottom row doesn't sit flush anymore. I think it might have something to do with the wheels. So you kind of have to pull this one. Oh, there we go. Okay, so then when you go to push it back, you have to zoom out. There we go. You have to actually like push. Isn't it? But yeah, just the doors on this side. We're actually going to be changing this reptile room. We're going to be switching it with our bedroom. That way, since this room is kind of off by itself in our bedroom, our house is set up really weird. Our bedroom has a door that leads to our backyard, so the dogs and the kids and stuff are constantly running through our bedroom to get outside. We're just going to switch those. That way this becomes an actual by itself bedroom space, and that becomes more of like a den reptile room space, I guess. I don't know. We're going to be doing that, and then we're going to take the wheels off and see if that fixes the issue. But yeah, that is really the only structural issue that I have seen. I'm gonna be completely honest, I was so worried about putting these wheels on to begin with because this is a lot of weight. There are three 6-foot tanks with full substrate, giant water dishes. I was worried about this amount of weight on these casters on these wheels, and the wheels have been fantastic. For 2 years, this has been in the same spot, and the wheels have not moved. I did try to just roll the whole thing at one point. That wasn't happening. Honestly, again, it probably would have been better just to go without the wheels. So moving on to modifications that I personally made on these tanks, just because I needed to. I don't know where else going with that. Moving on to modifications that I made onto this tank to make it easier to use. I did end up adding plastic handles to the doors to make them easier to open and close because they did not come with handles. They came from Amazon. They were like super cheap, but those have been so fantastic for opening and closing these doors regularly. They have stood up also for the 2 years. I've had them on the entire 2 years and they've worked great. The paint has held up. There are some very slight scratches in this. It does do pretty fantastic at attracting fingerprints. But overall, I am so incredibly happy with these tanks. This was purchased as the like deluxe kit. So for the light bulbs and fixtures and things, those have all held up fantastically too. I'm still using, if I'm not standing in front of it, the water dishes that came with it. This is like driftwood that he loves as a basking spot. It's a Sterling's tank that he loves as a basking spot that came with it. The fixtures have all been fantastic. Obviously the bulbs have blown. The bulbs weren't the best. Like, I went through those pretty fast. The bulbs themselves weren't great, but I mean, they're heat bulbs. They're not really expected to be perfect for years. Everything is fantastic in this tank other than the way that that door is working for some strange reason. Of course, just the my experience sort of things. These are still holding humidity fantastically. No, you can't see. Maybe. There's like a whole shed she just shed. I just pulled his shed out last night. It's still holding humidity great. It's fantastic at holding temperature. A little too good sometimes. I have to adjust things accordingly, which is why I love dimmer domes. But yeah, and they do hold a lot of substrate that gets changed out, and it's very expensive to change out all that substrate. So, but they are 6-foot tanks. What do you expect for 6-foot tanks? Overall, I would still definitely recommend these tanks. And definitely get these substrate barriers if you have the option, because they do so good at holding in that substrate, and also at just holding in the snakes, because my snakes like to shove up against these and even wedge their heads down in there. If those things weren't there, they would be like all over the glass. Definitely with Morty down here, he scratches at the substrate barrier nonstop, and that whole acrylic, I keep calling it glass, it's not glass, it's acrylic. That whole acrylic on his tank would definitely be scratched up if that substrate barrier wasn't there. His old tank, which we will see in a different video, or if I posted it first, you will have seen it in a previous video, that was all scratched up because of him. And this one is nowhere near as bad. So definitely highly recommend getting substrate barriers, or making your own, whatever you want to do. I am still pretty haunted at putting these tanks together though. And that is a huge thing. These tanks are not easy to put together.
But make sure you pay attention to the orientation of those corners and the doors.
Apart and start over? Take all the corners apart?
No, I'll take a side off, fix it, put the side back on.
Luckily, fixing the corners wasn't the end of the world. We did have to take apart each corner and reorient it. It added about an hour or two onto the whole thing, but the tanks weren't ruined. It's not me setting up a tank if something isn't messed up.
I am dreading, absolutely dreading moving this. All right. Camera died, but I was able to find chapstick, so I feel better now. I don't remember where I was exactly, but just to wrap it all up, I still absolutely love these tanks. Also, these are not super high humidity animals, but they are pretty, I mean, they like to be misted. We have 2 ball pythons and a Irian giant blue tongue skink, so he does like a little bit more humidity, but I have not seen the slightest hint of rust on these tanks, and I feel like that's super important to note. But yeah, that's about it. I still recommend the custom cages stack. After almost 2 years of having it, it's holding up very nicely, and the animals still absolutely love it, and I still love admiring those backgrounds. Yeah, this tank looks like it's scratched up, but it's just the substrate barrier. But yeah, that is it. That is all I have for this week's video. Hopefully it was helpful. If you are thinking about getting a custom cage or VisionCages, actually I guess I could have included my VisionCage over there. Really quick, just as a voiceover for this VisionCage, honestly it's not my favorite. It wasn't a great choice for a baby cave gecko. When I put her in there, you can see all the foam and cardboard I had to shove in there because I caught her trying to escape out of the pockets more than once. But I do love the fact that this has glass and not acrylic, so it's, other than the water spots, it's still in really good condition. It's not my favorite just visually, honestly, but it's still a pretty okay tank. I've had this one set up for about 3 or 4 years now, and so the background, the tank, everything has held up for that long, so on that front it is pretty good. Hopefully this was helpful. I just kind of realized that I always do these big videos and then I never follow up on them. I mean, I continue to use the things, I just don't ever really give in detail reviews about how things are going with those items. So I thought that I would do this in this like little series. As always, if you're not already, please feel free to follow me on my socials, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a video, which is every Sunday and some Wednesdays. This week's Instagram shout out is here, and this week's shout out is here. Thanks so much for liking, following, subscribing, and commenting, and sharing, and all that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. I had some chipstick. Okay. Good. I got this. Should have been prepared. Should have been prepared. Else, reptiles, custom cages. There we go. What's that? 2022, August 2022. So actually, I'm almost at 2 years. I guess all this needs to be B-roll. I need to make a list. So I think after